Well, good morning. This is, as they say on television, a very special edition, a very special episode of the Innovation Conversation. How you doing, Tom?
I'm good, Kevin. How are you, sir?
Good, good. So as I have explained to the audience that going to do something a little different today and for the next few days, because Friday is going to be Morning Newsbeat's 20th anniversary. So, which is, I said, thank you.
Congratulations.
I've survived.
So have we.
And, yeah, we all have, right? It's amazing. It started right after 9/11, and now we're in the middle of a pandemic. I feel like it's been bracketed that way. And we had a big recession in the middle. So you go figure. Anyway, so the first question I want to ask you, and this is a question that I'm asking everybody that I'm talking to for this special series, is, so where were you 20 years ago? What were you doing?
I'd like to say I was in middle school.
So would I. Good answer.
20 years ago, gosh, I was kind of relatively freshly out of or off of my 10-year stint at Wegmans. Had totally drank the industry Kool-Aid, was fully in love with the grocery business and, in retail in general, and working with CPGs to build, great customer experiences and all that. And, but right after that, I left there to go start a technology company. We were doing some B2B stuff between retailers and manufacturers called Notiva. And I remember it was probably close to 20 years to the month or so that we met.
Yeah, I got a call from Jack Allen
at Michigan State.
I'm sorry?
He was Michigan State.
Michigan State. And he said that you were looking for a couple of people to facilitate this focus group at this meeting of retailers and manufacturers, and that Jack recommended me, and you said great. And so I can remember, I flew down. That was when you and I first met. So we've known each other as long as I've been doing Morning Newsbeat.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, that was just about 20 years ago. That was a meeting in Hilton Head, and we got some interested folks together and talked about innovation and ways to think outside the box and do things between. This is kind of in the B2B space, and maybe not as exciting as consumer facing stuff, but get everyone together and who would have thunk at that time that 20 years from then we'd be speaking over a video platform of some sort that was, it seemed kind of Jetsons like at the time.
Really. So remind me, I said my main memory of that was you, Jack Allen, who's, I still hear from all the time, retired now, living in Florida. And Glenn Trebeek was down there as well. But I remember my main memory of that is being in a room with all you people and thinking to myself, I have no idea what these people are all talking about. These are all so much smarter than I am.
Come on.
And no, I was out of my depth just trying to ask semi-intelligent questions. Remind me, what was Notiva?
So we were doing, when I was at Wegmans, we were the early days of founding UCCnet, which ultimately became GS1 and like the global, data standards between companies. And, the core value proposition that we were kind of building off of that at Notiva was just the whole back-end process of kind of business processes between retailers and their suppliers. So we were starting with just something as simple as invoice presentment. All right, you ship me a bunch of stuff. You send me the invoice. I kind of through an online capability, match that payment, say, this is what I actually got. And we settle the transaction through that. Doesn't seem all that exciting, but when you think about, the size and complexity of retailers, the numbers of line items that are on invoices, the ways that retailers or that manufacturers have made their deal structures, the more complex, it actually created this, back-end environment that was relatively full of friction. And, we grew the platform. We got some great early retailer manufacturer side customers. we grew the platform we were doing about $100 million a day in volume on the platform. So we grew it to a pretty good size. And then we were able to get that sold to Oracle. So, we were at it for probably 4.5 years or so, from start to finish, and had a pretty good outcome there. And definitely was something that enabled me to kind of build from in my career. So that was pretty cool.
I would imagine at some level that the part of the problem, well, part of the challenges you faced had to be just infrastructural, if that's a word, right? In the sense that, so even before that, I was involved, I was consulting on a project called the Supermarket Trade Network. And the idea was to eliminate 75% of in-person sales calls, right? And be able to do it in essence like this, although clearly that not only did this technology not exist, but we would go into companies and they didn't have computers on people's desks.
Right.
So they had to buy computers for them and put in T1 lines. There's a word, there's a term, right? And so the challenge was, excuse me, people just weren't ready for it in a way, at all. I mean, it was very difficult.
We've always been things that, and maybe it's just having started at Wegmans and Wegmans always being just out ahead of the customer, but we always had the ability at Wegmans to bring the customer along, right? So we could create the innovation, draw customers to it, and then that would become a standard, right?
Right.
You think about just all various, prepared foods and bakeries and patisseries and, produce and just all the things that Wegmans does fantastic. When we jumped out to do Notiva, it was right when this new tech standard called XML, which basically allowed you to convert data into a common standard so data could talk to each other. It was right as that was coming to fruition. We probably would have been better off doing it a couple of years later, because it wasn't like anybody else came along with the innovation. We probably would have finished at the same time, and we could have probably started 2 or 3 years later. And then after going to Amazon, Amazon kind of like Wegmans could create this innovation and then bring their customers along.
Right.
And I think, you're being customer centric and being so innovation driven and ingrained, getting that kind of relatively instant feedback is nice. You're able to get that. Not everything at Amazon works, right? You talk about the Fire Phone, you talk about, there's a few things they've done for sure that haven't worked. And, we've talked, there's lots of things Amazon does that never sees the light of day, and that's okay. Going forward to kind of the things we're doing in our venture firm now, it is, you need to be ahead of the market. And sometimes you think you're a couple years ahead of the market. But what you realize is that you're really like 4 or 5 years ahead of the market. So, you just got to have that ability to, have the right kind of capital, not push too hard, not spend too much, getting there. You don't want to blow all your capital kind of before the market's ready for you. But, there's definitely, always kind of an innovation challenge, bringing innovations forward at the right time, for market adoption.
Which is why, by the way, nobody's ever heard of the Supermarket Trade Network.
Right? I mean, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, there was just not the funding to keep nurturing it as long as they needed to nurture it to
exactly
until to the point where it became viable. So out of curiosity, has the way you think about innovation changed in 20 years? I mean, certainly the world has changed in 20 years. As I was reminded the other day, I mean, this started in 20 years ago, but it was 2007 when the smartphone really came out. So I was 7 years ahead of the smartphone, and I can't even remember a time when I didn't own a smartphone, really. So
yeah, that's true. I mean, to think about, like, I got to Amazon in early 2005, so that was before the smartphone. I had a cell phone, but it was just as keys, and it was big buttons with numbers, in a screen that kind of showed what you were doing with those numbers. I mean, I'm very fortunate to, I was at Wegmans at a very formidable time in my career, right? And I was very fortunate to have, really up close exposure and interaction with Bob Wegman when he was alive, and Danny, and then the senior team, around them. innovation was ingrained in what we did. It was we always felt at Wegmans, we would always say every day you get our best, and our best would always get better. And I think we would come in every week, every day and every week, wanting to be better for our customers, right? And so, I think that having an innovation mindset to me has kind of always been something that has served me well. But again, I still get out of bed in the morning and try to do things better. I would say overall, the way I think about innovation, I mean, innovation used to be a competitive differentiator, right? If you could innovate better than your peers, you would generally be rewarded by the market, over your peers. I think that that's still true, but I think it's like today innovation it's basically like a prerequisite or a requirement, right? If you're not innovating, you will very quickly fall behind your competition.
Right.
And I think that I always say there's almost like a Moore's law. Moore's law has to do with computational speed, and I think it's every 18 months or whatever it doubles, something like that. I could be wrong on that, but I think it's something like that. I think there's a Moore's law of innovation that's happened in business over the 20 years, right? And there used to be, if you brought something to market over an innovation cycle that was a couple of years, that was probably pretty good. Now with technology, with consumers' expectation for innovation, like shoppers, they expect you to innovate on their behalf. They expect you to bring them new capabilities to make their lives easier. And whether that's what we've come to be used to in technological innovation, whether that's advancements that Amazon has made, because Amazon is definitely setting an innovation standard now. Like the whole market has to move so much faster, so you always have to be bringing innovations out. And I think if you're not bringing something new to your customers that they notice, basically quarterly, almost like the steady flow of innovation to your customers, you're going to lose them, and they're going to go to folks that are innovating faster. So to me, I think it's innovation is kind of now a core requirement to be successful and to compete.
Yeah.
Where in the past it was differentiating.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've talked a lot here over the past year or so about how companies innovated, especially in food retailing, right? They innovated so much faster because they didn't think of it as innovation. They thought about it as being survival. And the challenge is, it seems to me, is to maintain that pace.
Absolutely.
They may think they can back off, right? And slow down. But in fact, probably the exact opposite is true.
And I think, I think that it is not, innovation for innovation's sake. Like you can't just be putting out new stuff to put it out, although you can't be afraid to fail, but I think it's a change in kind of corporate mindset and corporate culture and how you measure, right? I mean, you have to reward risk-taking, calculated risk-taking, right? There's got to be relative boundaries around, where you can go with different innovations or what your budgets can be to do that. But, I think I think as a company, you can never, you don't necessarily have to have your foot like slammed down on the accelerator, but you want to be on a pretty good cruise control, where you're probably right at or a little over the speed limit, but you're not going to get in trouble. Like I think that's kind of the pace at which you really want to innovate. And if you slow down too much, I think you're going to get hurt by that.
You got to be on 40 in a 35-mile zone. Basically.
40 and a 35, maybe 67 and a 60. Yeah. You'll be okay. You're not going to get passed by a couple folks, but people aren't going to be beeping at you to get going.
So I'm curious, when you look back over the past 20 years, is there something you missed? Is there something that's become like an enormous hit that you just said, oh man, I just didn't see that coming?
Jeez. Oh gosh. This is going to make me super sad. No, not really. Well, getting to Amazon early, that was good. I tell you, when I took the gig at Amazon, I was choosing between a gig at Amazon and a gig with a major grocery retailer. I wanted to get back into the business, and it was a tough decision. And I'm glad I made the decision to go to Amazon. It absolutely shaped my career in ways that going back into grocery would not have.
Right.
And the stock was a lot less expensive then. So that was like a good move at the time. Things I miss.
To be honest, I was asked. I did this the other day with Michael, and I said, listen. In a lot of ways, I feel like I did not see Amazon growing at the rate that it's grown. I would not have, and I was an early adopter, right? I made my first purchase in Amazon 96, 97, so I was early. But I would not have, if you'd asked me then, I don't think I would have foreseen what it has become.
That's interesting. In my years at Amazon and even after leaving Amazon, seeing Amazon's growth rate, understanding the way Amazon thought about the shopper, the way they thought about retail in general, I think internally at Amazon, like we felt like we were going to become 20, 25% of retail. Like that was just kind of what we thought and knew. And I don't think you realize how big 20 or 25% of retail is. Do you realize that, even today, Amazon is like 10% of retail or something like that, it's, and they're still as ubiquitous as they are. So I think, we did the math and said, Amazon's going to be that big, but we never really realized what that was going to be. And of course, never would have thought about, what it would mean as far as like media, and Amazon Studios and what Amazon's doing now in healthcare and this thing called the cloud. And like, that stuff is all just incredible. That's become so, I feel very fortunate that I said yes to Amazon. I said no to a company called Ibotta, which I know a lot of folks have heard of. Okay. So Brian Leach, when he was founding it, he was an attorney and he had this idea and he came to me and I was interested. And I said, well, I think you can make, a go of it. But at the time it was more like, I'm going to grab my receipts from stuff I bought and I'm going to accumulate the data on that. And I'm going to work with manufacturers to do rebates for customers. Like, okay, that's interesting. A little bit, and that thing.
Listen, I think you could stop there. I think moving to Amazon at that
there's other ones.
It's never going to be a bad decision.
I had a dinner. There was a dinner with the Winklevi twins right after they had gotten their Facebook settlement. This is true.
Oh, really?
And there was some discussion on this notion of cryptocurrency. And I was like, come on, what is that? That's never going to take off.
Well, that would answer the question. So what do you make of, so I keep reading about metaverse.
Yeah.
Does it,
oh my gosh.
What is that going to mean in terms of the food industry?
I don't know. I mean, I'll probably be as wrong on this as I was on crypto. I don't know. I mean, and maybe it's because I'm old now. Although what was it called? Second Life or whatever. What was it called? The alternative world. Was it called that?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was Second Life, wasn't it? I think that's what it was called.
Something like that. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that thing ever really took off, or maybe it did. I don't know. Maybe it's this massive thing that I don't even know about. Yeah. But I mean, I do think the idea though of like virtualization, of interactivity, right? Of, physical and digital experiences start to meld where the line between them is less discernible. I think that we're heading there. Right. I do. I think that, you with your device, your ability to interact with, store assets, products, people in the store and creating that kind of in-store experience or enjoying then some of that in-store type experience when you're not in the store. There's probably something there. I come from the transactional world of Amazon. I come from a transactional world of Replenium with auto replenishment, where we want to make it easy to do, to automate tasks of shopping. So, this idea in worlds where you search for a product, you find the product that meets your need. This new way to discover and interact with products and services, there's probably something there. Especially as you start to think about how, elements of this metaverse can serve you, right? I mean, I did my first, and everybody's laughing in the audience, I did my first teledoc appointment a couple of weeks ago, and, it was with a person. Right. But there's absolutely no reason that needed to be a person, right? Because she was reading a script based on the evaluation of me. Yeah. And that could have totally been, AI based and probably very accurate. Yeah. So is there, as we think
without the judgmental eye look, right?
Totally. But, as you think about like customer service, you think about interacting with customer service in the event that you have like a post-purchase issue, or just customer service when you're discovering products and services and having your needs met and whatnot. I can see, capabilities in that, certainly elevating. So I certainly don't want to discount what the metaverse could be, but I just don't know in our lives how prevalent it will be. I guess that, we will see that.
Yeah.
We'll see.
It's funny because you said, well, I'm old, right? And I'm older than you are. And it seems to me that one of the things I find myself thinking as I get older is that virtual experiences are not as valuable to me as actual experiences. So, and I always feel like, I always wonder, is the metaverse going to be to the real world what going to Epcot, right, and going to Paris or Italy or whatever the various thing is, compared to actually going to Paris and Italy and stuff like this. Now, I've been lucky, right? I've been in my life, I've had a chance to go to those real places. Yeah. Not everybody does, so I'm not discounting the importance of having that. It's not the real experience, but they're trying to offer something entertaining to people. And I guess that's what I find myself thinking more about as I get older, is that I want to spend less time in virtual experiences and more time actually doing this stuff. But that's me being philosophical and,
Right. But I mean, I guess
I was going to call it the back 9, but I'm probably on the back 3.
Oh, don't even go there, Kevin. We're not talking about that.
You know what I mean?
Business partner Justin Lay says, today you're as young as you'll ever be.
Yes.
Don't forget that.
True. It's not going to get any better.
No, I don't know. I hear you. Yeah, I mean, I think if it gives folks access to, even if it gives you access though to experiences you may not have been able to access otherwise.
Right.
Yeah, and it's a rich, rewarding, entertaining or fulfilling experience. There's probably something.
Yeah. I'm curious. What again? This is a question I've been asking everybody. During the pandemic, was there a TV show or something you binged that you got addicted to because we were all home watching things?
I did almost zero TV watching pre-COVID.
Oh, pre-COVID. Okay.
Yeah, pre-COVID. Well, we did watch all 93 episodes of Mad Men.
Wow.
Which was, it was just cool to, I think they did such a good job at bringing you back to the 60s and everything that, it just to watch it, and you think about like how different, the business environment was then in many ways that aren't, you think of things like, there was the Chicago race riots that were happening, like they were experiencing, that, and then hearing like the nuance and the kind of the depth of that, and then literally bringing it, watching that while the George Floyd stuff is happening and all of our unrest is happening, and thinking, wow, that was 50 years ago or 45 years ago, and to think how similar things are now, which is kind of a little bit sad. And then obviously the office environment with the Me Too movement, and just seeing how things were viewed back then. So I wouldn't say that there's anybody on Mad Men whose behavior you'd want to emulate, but it was entertaining. But it did bring you back to the kind of the romance of the big brand, because I think we've lost a lot of the romance of the big brand when we've now moved into this very transactional, digital environment. The idea of a brand promise and kind of all that came from that. So Mad Men was really great. Can't go wrong with Yellowstone. Can't go wrong with Ted Lasso. Schitt's Creek was pretty awesome. So yeah, I'm sure there were a bunch of other ones too, but yeah, no, binge watching is a way of life now, and I love it.
Because part of what I'm persuaded about is that what you just said, right, which is that right, you didn't watch TV before, but now this is a key part of your entertainment agenda, is exactly why people in the industry need to pay even more attention to online, right? Because the same impulse that makes us say, I'm not going to a movie because I can watch something here at home.
Yeah.
Is the same impulse which is going to say, I don't need to go to the store to buy Oreos, Cheerios, and Tide. I can just order that. I might go to the movies to see a Marvel movie or the new Bond movie or Star Wars. But for the 95% of stuff, it doesn't matter. And I think it is a through in terms of consumer behavior.
Yeah, I think most things that consumers consume, it's going to move to more of a hybrid kind of environment. I mean, for sure in retail, for sure in the food and grocery business. We had a band played in our office a couple of weeks ago, the Struts. And they played during the day, and it was great. We had an awesome in-person experience. We were, in Washington, we had to be masked, so we were appropriately masked and distanced and all that stuff. And they put on a great set for us. And then that evening, one of the band members tested positive. And so they had to cancel the rest of their tour. And I happened to talk to one of their management the next day, and and he was just talking about the economics of how the industry works, but he was saying that he thinks the music business is going to become even more and more hybrid. And he likened it to the NFL, right? And the NFL, up until maybe 8 or 10 years ago, was 100% about the in-stadium experience, right? They had the TV rights, but it was all about the in-stadium experience. Now, you think about all the ways that you experience the NFL between fantasy football and digital experiences and streaming, and he thinks the music industry is going to go that way, and I think that does make a lot of sense, right? Like that mix of in-person sensory, with kind of digital, with portability. I think a lot of things are going to be moving more and more toward that, and we shouldn't limit ourselves in how we think about the opportunities there.
Is there a better way to watch Monday Night Football than with the Manning brothers, right? And who would have even conceived of that 6 months ago, right?
Yes.
And it changes the experience.
It does, right? Yeah. Who would have thought that? Yeah, would have been even remotely possible and or entertaining a few years ago.
And if I'm a retailer, I'm thinking, okay, what's my version of that? How do I think about that differently?
Absolutely.
And I agree with you about they have to figure out the economics of it all, right? Mm-hmm. You're not going to be able to make movies for $300 million anymore, because suddenly you're not going to be able, it's like the Bond movie.
Or if you spend that, you've got to make sure that you've got, multiple, ways to distribute that asset or that franchise, or, the byproducts of that, so that over whatever your relevant time frame is, 5, 8, 10 years, that you get that. But
it's crazy to make a movie where the budget is so high that to make money, because it's usually 2.5 times your number, you make a profit. So to make a movie where you say, well, listen, if we don't make $900 million, we're not going to make a profit. You go, well, maybe we have to rethink the economics of that.
Yeah,
but I think that's going to happen to every industry. They're going to have to rethink the economics of all this, from delivery to in this industry, and a lot of stuff. So last quick 2 questions. So a retailer comes to you and says, we need to rethink and redefine what it means to be essential. Can you help us? What would you say to that person?
Yeah, I think essential is not as much about stuff, and it's about utility, right? So to be essential means, to me, when my customer gets out of bed in the morning and is navigating their day, they turn to me to solve as many needs as I can, right? And and again, it has to be within the right economics and all that of the retailer. But I want to be thought of and turned to as an essential, partner to my customers. So it could be sets of services, could be healthcare, self-care, it could be culinary, it could be the utility of getting me products, right? It could be, lots of kind of services and things that touch the customer on a day in and day out basis, just solve problems.
I suspect your answer to my second question is actually going to be the same, which is, what's the biggest organizational and kind of cultural change that companies need to make to start to think about innovating? And I suspect you would have very much the same answer, which is think about utility. Think about it, not what's on the shelves, but what problems you're solving.
Yeah, and what problem you're solving, and again, it sounds so cliche, but start with the customer, right? Start with the customer, understand them, obsess over them, determine what you can do uniquely for them better than your competition can do, and go do it and do it well, and then go find more things, and just keep obsessing over them.
Well, Tom, this has been great. It's been a little bit different innovation conversation. I can't tell you how appreciative I am about the fact that that you've been around and part of the ride for a long time now. I think MorningNewsBeat became infinitely better the minute we started doing innovation conversations every other week. So I really appreciate that. I don't know if I'm going to do another 20 years, but I hope you'll do as many of them as I want to do.
I will do as many years as you do, and I truly appreciate the opportunity to have collaborated with you over the years. between our speaking gigs we've done together in many cities throughout the world. Because I think we did some, I don't even remember what the organization was, but I think we were in London or Paris or Amsterdam. We did Amsterdam together.
That's good.
Yeah. But yeah, that, and just, and congratulations. I mean, 20 years. This is, you've made my career better. I mean, I really look forward to these every couple of weeks. And, sometimes I'm lucky to be at home or in the office. Sometimes I'm in some city somewhere in the US. We don't know where, but, just congratulations. That's a really big milestone.
It is. So thank you. See you in 2 weeks.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.